This new Stasis build lets you throw down Stasis turrets one after another before the current one has even expired. You'll be freezing everything while creating tons of elemental wells to benefit you with multiple things, and this is one of the best Warlock games in the game for endgame PvE. Now I'm running this build in a Master weekly mission while slightly underpowered, which is currently the hardest difficulty mode in the game right now, but is below a Grandmaster, which isn't currently out yet as of making this video. But this build, it'll be extremely useful for Master and Grandmaster content, as you will be able to infinitely freeze everything, which makes fighting ads much easier. So guys, in this one we're going to be going over the new updated Warlock Stasis build in Destiny 2, and you can use this build with the new exotic Osmiomancy Gloves or the Eye of Another World. Both will be just as effective. So guys, before we start, be sure to check out my sponsor down below for cheap Destiny 2 silver and use my code DIVIDE if you decide to check out. And if you like this video, then don't forget to leave a rating, like or dislike, and now let's get straight into it. Now as always, if you do enjoy these build videos, then don't forget to check out the full playlist link down below for more, as I do create these builds on a weekly basis. Now with this build, you'll be able to pretty much run around freezing everything automatically while fighting, so you don't actually need to do anything, as the turret will do it all for you. And you should also get that turret back before the current one disappears. Now a turret will last for 30 seconds, and there are two ways to put this build together that I thought were the most effective. The first one, you can use Eye of Another World. This exotic will stack ability cooldowns with your stat tier, which is 38.5% from tier 0, and reduces the bonus by 2.2% at each tier level. So if you have 100 discipline, then Eye of Another World is going to give you a further 16% cooldown on top of that 100 discipline stat. Your class ability on the other hand will be a 19%, so slightly higher. Now Osmiomancy Gloves, this will give you an additional cool snap grenade, which means you can throw down 2 turrets, but the downside to this is that the cooldown of those grenade types is much longer. If you decide to use the Osmiomancy for 2 Stasis turrets using the cool snap grenades, your base cooldown for a turret will be 56 seconds at 100 discipline, not including Stasis Fragments and armor mods, but you'll also have 2 grenades to start with. For Eye of Another World, the cooldown at 100 discipline will be 49 seconds when using the Dustfield grenade. Now it may seem like the new gloves are worth using since the cooldown is only an extra 7 seconds, and you get an extra charge. But on the plus side of using Eye of Another World, you'll have that reduced cooldown for your melee and rift on top, which is significantly higher the lower your actual stat base is for those abilities. The choice is yours, but both exotics will make the build perform just as good. Now the way you'll use this build is pretty simple. Just run into a room filled with ads, champions and bosses, and then throw down your Stasis turret by charging your grenade. Let that turret slow and freeze ads while you kill them and other ads. That will then spawn Stasis elemental shards. Pick those up to gain ability energy, and then you'll be getting your turret back before the first one actually goes away. During this time, use your other abilities including your rift, because when activating your rift and getting a weapon final blow, you'll create a void elemental well. Then picking up that well will give us damage resistance. Now this is perfect if you have a bunch of Stasis shards lying around, because in a harder activity, you can use that void well to give you enough time to run in and pick up those shards without getting completely melted in the process. So personally, I think this build is perfect for any endgame PvE activity. So let's get into the setup of the build, and like all my previous builds, we'll start with the exotic armor. And like I mentioned, you can either use Eye of Another World or the new Osmiomancy Gloves. Both will work just as good, and you won't need to mess around with the build setup. Just throw on all the correct mods that we'll be using and you should be good. For the loadout, that is completely your choice and also depends on the activity. For a Master 1580 weekly campaign mission, where I have Unstoppables and Overloads, I'll be using an Unstoppable Pulse Rifle with a Void Fusion and Sleeper for DPS. Now my LFG team will be covering the Overloads and non-Void shields, but on the unlikely chance that you'll end up doing this solo with this build, which by the way I would suggest you use a Void build that I made if you are doing this one solo. But if you are that guy and you need everything covered, usually an Arbalist with an Unstoppable energy or Overload energy would do the trick. But with Overload and Unstoppables, you'll probably end up going with double primary weapons and a Lucent finisher so that you can at least get infinite heavy ammo to kill those champs. But you really would adjust your loadout to the activity's needs. For the subclass, we're using Stasis. We will be running a Healing Rift with this and a Dusky Grenade, as these will have the reduced cooldown. If you're using the new exotic, then you'll want to run the Cold Snap Grenades, but our first aspect here is Bleak Watcher, where you can convert your grenade into a Stasis Turret that fires slowing projectiles at nearby targets. Amazing aspect, and we will be using our grenade on this all the time. But the second aspect we have is Glacial Harvest, where freezing targets create stasis shards around that frozen target. That will be caused by our turrets, and we will be able to get our turret back mostly by picking up those shards that it creates. For the fragments, we have Whisper of Torment for grenade energy when we take damage from targets. This really does speed up the cooldown, so strongly recommend you use this. But next up we have Whisper of Durance, where slows from abilities last longer. Whisper of Shards, where shattering a stasis crystal boosts the recharge rate of your grenade. You can swap this one out as it really isn't needed, but only benefits you mostly when you have allies that create you stasis crystals. But our last fragment is Whisper of Rime, to get a small amount of overshield when you pick up those stasis shards. Now going back to the exotics, so you can use the new Osmiomancy Gloves, where your cool snap grenades have an additional charge that recharges quicker on direct impact, and the Seeker spawn travels further. If you use this, you will need to make sure you run cool snap grenades, but I have another world. This will highlight priority targets and improve the regen speed of your grenade, melee and rift abilities, which is on average a plus 30 stat increase that stacks beyond your initial 100. As a passive bonus. For this build here though, we will be using Eye of Another World, and there will be a dim link down below for you to view the full setup and mod placement. And if you want to see an ornament you like in any build, then it will be easily findable by looking on Destiny Item Manager, where I have that link to the full build. So getting into the mods for the armor, the very first mod we have is Elemental Shards. This is so that stasis shards created can count as stasis elemental wells, so you could even run an elemental charge with a charger light mod, or mods if you really wanted to, but since the great nerf to protective light this season, we will be making adjustments by sticking with an elemental well build. So the second mod on our list is Well of Restoration, where picking up those stasis elemental shards, or wells, will grant us additional energy to the ability that has the lowest energy. Now you can stack these, but I don't feel it's necessary, but having that extra ability energy really does help, especially if you are running a low stat build, which a lot of people may not have high stat armor if you are fairly new to the game. Moving down the list, we have Reaping Wellmaker to spawn a Void Elemental Well after using our class ability and then getting a kill with our weapon. This is good because we will be using that Void Well to grant us Well of Tenacity to take reduced damage from combatants for a short period of time, which may just save you a lot when you are running after those stasis shards to pick up. And I know these are Void Wells and not stasis, but it really doesn't matter as long as you do get that extra protection, but you won't be able to run Font of Might as we aren't a Void subclass. But if you wanted to, you could run a Volatile Flow mod if you have Void weapons on as your 5th mod, which I currently have empty, using Distribution instead, which you don't really need on. For the normal mods, starting with a helmet, we have Harmonic Siphon to generate orbs and multi-kills with our weapon that matches our subclass, which for me, that is a primary stasis weapon. You don't need this for the build, but it is nice to generate a few orbs here and there. But with that, we have our Ammo Finder mod for our heavy weapon. In the gauntlets, we have our champion mods that you may need, along with Grenade Kickstart to get some energy when we've used our grenade. But if you need multiple champion mods, then replace it temporarily. In the chest, we have our damage resistant mod. And again, if you prefer to have extra ammo, then throw on your reserve mod. But for the legs, we have our scavenger mod, and then for the class, we are using Distribution for reduced ability cooldown when using our rift near enemies, along with a Lucent Finisher for pretty much infinite heavy ammo when we use it on a champion. Amazing for endgame PvE, especially when you are playing solo. But lastly, the stat you do want to max out is of course going to be that Discipline. Give that to 100, and then if you can, get recovery up as high as possible to 100. And if you can master this build and get the triple 100 build, then go with Intellect for that 3rd stat. Now this build has to be one of my favourite Warlock builds in Destiny 2, especially when it comes to endgame PvE, simply because it makes life so much easier when you have a Stasis Turret just consistently freezing champions one after another. But the only thing I don't like about this build is the fact that sometimes that Stasis Turret freezing champions can mess up your stuns, so you end up with inconsistent DPS on that champion, like in Unstoppable. But overall, it's a perfect build to use in GMs, and it's always going to be one of the top builds in Destiny 2, despite Void 3.0 being the god of PvE right now. So guys, that there is your new Warlock Stasis build for infinite turrets in Destiny 2 Witch Queen Season of the Risen. As always, be sure to check out the full playlist down below for more like this, and whatever you guys get up to, have a good one, and I'll catch you all in the next build video soon as we move further into Season 16. Peace out guys.